Let me first once again welcome Alexander Grigorievich.
Thank you.
Thank him for accepting the invitation and coming on this day, just as we agreed.
Every year.
And on such a day, when we remember all the soldiers who gave their lives for the motherland, this is our day of remembrance. It has become a tradition. We meet here regularly on Valum. Alexander Grigorievich, and of course, as we agreed, there will be an opportunity to discuss our current affairs. The government is working very actively. We have,
That's your work.
yes, to undertake his idea. We already have over 50 billion in trade turnover. That's actually a very good achievement. There are a lot of projects, and they're in very important, promising areas. Of course, with such abundance, a lot of questions always come up. We'll have the opportunity to discuss all these questions.
We'll sacrifice our weekend for the sake of discussion.
Would you like to say anything on this matter?
Thank you, Vladimir Vladimirovich. You put it very well. As I was flying in here, I was thinking that we've started a good tradition. 2 Orthodox peoples, each of us as representatives every year, and this church already feels like home. But as we were approaching, we noticed that the Smolensk skeet is great, but there's no Belarusian skeet.
The skeet is ours, shared.
Yeah,
It was founded in 1914.
in 1914. Well, and Smolensk is practically right next door. So we'll think about it too. There's plenty of space here.
Yeah,
Maybe build a little church or something. We'll think about it. Since the road is already laid here, and a lot of Belarusians come, we share one faith, our Orthodox faith. So thank you for establishing this good tradition.
thank you. Yes, you're welcome.
Interfax, this is Sonia speaking with you. We wanted to ask you about the third round of negotiations that took place in Istanbul. You haven't commented on them, have you? We wanted to clarify. Can you tell us if there has been a response from Kiev regarding the proposal that was voiced in Istanbul about the 3 groups that could operate online? How do you generally assess the course of the negotiations and their prospects? And one more thing. Recently, just the other day, in fact, I think it was today, Zelensky said that there's no point in negotiating with Russia right now, and that it's necessary to wait until the regime changes.
Well, in principle, we can wait if the Ukrainian leadership believes that now is not the time and that it's necessary to wait. Please, we are ready to wait. That's the first point. Second, our political system is based on the Constitution of the Russian Federation, and the government has been formed strictly in accordance with the country's fundamental law. The same can't be said about Ukraine. I don't want to get into details right now, but the current authorities are not based on the Ukrainian Constitution. The Constitution has clearly been violated. But I don't want to get into those details. As for negotiations, negotiations are always in demand and always important, especially when it comes to striving for peace. Overall, I view this positively. Well, how could you not view it positively when hundreds of people have returned to their homeland? That's a good thing. For humanitarian reasons, as you know, we have handed over thousands of bodies of fallen Ukrainian soldiers. In return, we received a few dozen of our guys who gave their lives for the motherland. And isn't that a positive thing? Of course, that's a positive development. As for any disappointments from anyone, all disappointments arise from excessive expectations. That's a well-known general rule. But in order to approach the resolution of the issue peacefully, it's necessary to have thorough discussions, not in public, but calmly, in the quiet of the negotiation process. and that's exactly why we proposed creating the three groups you mentioned. Overall, the reaction from the Ukrainian side was positive. We agreed that we can conduct such negotiations without cameras and without any political noise, in a calm manner, and look for compromises. They haven't started working yet. This work hasn't begun yet. But overall, I repeat, the initial reaction from the Ukrainian side, as it seemed to us, was positive. That's why we expect this process to be completed.
As an additional question, tell me, do the conditions for a long-term ceasefire that you announced a year ago at the Foreign Ministry still stand?
Yes, those conditions, of course, remain the same. They are no longer just conditions, but goals. I formulated Russia's goals up until now. We were told that it was unclear what Russia wanted. We formulated them in June of last year at a meeting with the leadership of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. Everything is clear there, but the main thing is to eliminate the causes that gave rise to this crisis. That is the main point. And of course, humanitarian issues, security issues in the broadest sense, security issues, the security of Russia and of Ukraine as well. By the way, the Ukrainian delegation brought up the idea that maybe it makes sense to talk about the security of both Russia and Ukraine in the context of overall European security. One of the leaders of the Ukrainian delegation made this point. And overall, we believe this is correct. We share this view. That's it. And the humanitarian issue, this includes the Russian language and, the independence and decent conditions for the development of the Orthodox Church, the Christian Church in Ukraine. All of this, taken comprehensively together, truly needs to be thoroughly discussed and should indeed form the fundamental basis for a truly long-term, genuinely lasting peace, without any time limits or restrictions at all whatsoever.
Dear Alexander Grigorievich, Vladimir Vladimirovich, I can't help but ask about the hot topic. Constant Western sanctions, the EU literally churning out one package after another. We've already counted 18 of them. In this regard, will the strategy of the Union states somehow change? Will we respond and adjust our anti-sanction strategy that we've had up to now?
We've already changed everything we needed to. If someone closed a door in front of us, well, there are plenty of open doors in the world. Both Russia and Belarus have made a very serious pivot today. I think, as time goes by, the world will come to appreciate what we've accomplished. It was simply unimaginable back in the early 2020s. But nevertheless, we did it. We turned things around. We're living and we will keep on living. In our world, no one will succeed in bringing us to our knees. We are fully determined to defend our interests. But Russia, listen, it's a treasure trove of natural resources and technology. That's why we need time to prove, both to our own doubters and to those around us, that we're capable of a lot. Well, and yesterday you heard the meeting with the diplomats. I said, there are no sanctions. There are no sanctions. That's it. There's nothing to talk about them. As soon as we start talking about sanctions, then everyone who doesn't want to work uses it as an excuse, saying it's hard, it's difficult. No, that's it. Sanctions are opportunities. That's why, I think, in Russia it's the same. They act even more decisively, understanding this issue. We've always been close and we always will be. That was also mentioned yesterday. Don't worry about these sanctions. And as for what was asked of Vladimir Vladimirovich about negotiations, I absolutely support his position in this case. The president is absolutely right when he says that even during war, negotiations are always ongoing. The Americans fought in Vietnam, thousands of miles away, and from the very first day of the war, they were negotiating. And the Ukrainians' mistake, I've been watching this, is that they're demanding the impossible. What they're saying, and what Russia is proposing, as the president just stated, these things are resolved at the negotiating table. There can be compromises, concessions, twists and turns. But to just go at it head on like this, you said it right, that's just for show. That's to say, we talk a lot, but we don't actually want to do anything. That's why I personally mentioned the statement from our mutual friend, whom we were so concerned about, Donald Trump. I remember how anxious we were for him to win, and so on. 50, 60, 10 days. Politics doesn't work like that either. If he wants peace, he needs to get involved carefully and thoroughly. This is a military confrontation, and you can't just dictate terms here, especially to a nuclear power. Honestly, it's just laughable. I recently met Vladimir Vladimirovich arranged it with an American. I told him this straight up. These are his close associates, friends. I said, you're the president, so say it, but do it carefully, and you can come to an agreement. Again, it's all just talk about an air ceasefire. I said, yes, Russia is interested in this, and so is President Putin. But you don't actually want that, do you? Tell Zelensky to agree to this, so that these flying devices stop and don't fall on people's heads. There was already a recent incident, when in Belarus there were 59 kilograms of explosives packed with ball bearings and so on. Well, luckily, it didn't go off. It hit a 10-story apartment building where ordinary, simple people lived. That's why this escalation is dangerous. We need to put a stop to this, and we have to do it carefully. And so, what the Russians are negotiating with the Ukrainians in Istanbul, Vladimir Vladimirovich knows about it. He called me, remember, thanked me, and the talks are continuing in Belarus. We're handling all these exchanges at the border. The Ukrainians have opened the border, a section that hadn't been before, and they've restored the railway connection there. So, there is some progress. There was a lot of shouting about the children. Please, I said to the Russians, come and see for yourselves. Negotiations are underway between the Russian and Ukrainian ombudsmen regarding the children. What did Russia do wrong? There's a war going on. Children were left without guardians. Children were left behind. Were they fed, clothed? No, they were accused of this. For what? Please, let's keep negotiating, and the exchange is ongoing.
But it turned out there weren't that many children.
There weren't that many, of course. Just 3 or 4 children were exchanged. Those who had lost their children. Please.
In Istanbul, we said, give us the lists.
There were no lists. That's why there's all this public hype. It doesn't help. We just need to, sit down at the table and negotiate. No matter what the positions are.
Negotiations started in Belarus.
Yes, three rounds took place. Well, don't like it in Belarus? All right, fine. We discussed it with Vladimir Shvetsov. Even if it's on the moon, anywhere at all. But you need to sit down at the negotiating table and talk, not throw stones at each other. I want to meet with Putin. Why are you shouting about it? Prepare the proper groundwork, statements, and so on. The Americans talked about this. Prepare everything, and then sit down and sign. And invite Trump, Macron, anyone you want from the world. But you have to prepare for it. Don't they understand that? They do. And if they make such statements, it means they don't want to. They don't want to. They're just playing to the public.
If I may, one more question. You said there's always a broad agenda between our countries, and you'll discuss it. Will you be discussing security issues, and in particular, is there already any clarity regarding Orshnik? Both sides have confirmed that Orshnik will be in Belarus, but maybe there are already some specifics.
The specifics are that the military, even though they're practical people and always in a hurry, wanted this Orshnik, meaning the Belarusian position, to be deployed sometime next year. Vladimir Vladimirovich said it correctly. This year, we mainly need to finish these processes of construction, creation, and so on. We're not backing away from that for now.
No. The first thing I want to say in this regard is, we have produced the first serially manufactured Orshnik system. The first serial missile.
That's it.
Yes. and it has been delivered to the troops. Now the series is up and running. That's the first thing. Second, our specialists, both Belarusian military experts and Russian ones, have chosen the site for the future positions. Right now, work is underway to prepare these positions, so most likely we'll have this issue resolved by the end of the year.
Well, we're not rushing. We're taking our time. There's no need to get ahead of ourselves. As soon as everything is ready, not just the position, which, as you once said, is easy to build. We need the combat equipment, the warheads, and the missiles, and that's not cheap. And to protect it, it needs protection. Everything is going according to plan. Don't worry about security.
How do you assess the current situation in the special military operation? And the overall dynamics?
Yesterday, as usual, I discussed these issues several times with the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff. And I knew we would be speaking to the press. So I asked them myself. I said, how should I answer this kind of question? The situation in the special military operation. The answer was, please answer honestly. Now they'll see this and remember. But what does honesty mean? It means, that our troops are advancing along the entire line of contact. Everywhere in the border zone and, in the Donetsk Republic, Luhansk, and Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Everywhere on all fronts. Some places more, some places less. But the positive momentum is thanks, of course, maybe to the heroism of our guys. And also, right now we're in a special place, a place where a church has been laid in memory of all our soldiers who died at all times for the fatherland. But right now we're talking about the special military operation. Today's positive momentum on the front is, of course, connected to the heroism of our guys who are now moving forward. But we also owe this to those of our soldiers who remained on the battlefield and gave their lives for the motherland, because it was they who created the conditions for today's people, those who are now in the ranks, to move forward and have this opportunity. This is a collective achievement. In this sense, not a single loss of ours has been in vain. That's, in general. Well, the momentum is clear. Just recently, we heard that a new settlement, Chesavyar, has been taken. This is quite a large settlement. We've already heard claims that this doesn't correspond to reality. I can tell you, excuse me, that this fully corresponds to reality. Moreover, the Ministry of Defense only announced it, I think, yesterday. In reality, Chesavyar was taken several days ago. Well, they were carrying out so-called mop-up operations, although probably there are attempts at counterattacks. But besides that, such statements claiming that the information from our side is incorrect show that the top political leadership of Ukraine is not very well informed about the ongoing events. But that's their problem now. But overall, I repeat once again, the dynamics are positive. After all, not so long ago, remember, everyone, our adversaries and ill-wishers, were talking about the need to inflict a strategic defeat on Russia on the battlefield. And today, they have a different, but equally passionate obsession to stop our advance at any cost. Either with promises of a good life, or with some threats, or by rearming and resupplying, the Ukrainian armed forces. To stop us, and then deal with these issues of resupplying and rearming. I'll repeat once more, we need a long-lasting and solid peace based on good fundamental principles that would satisfy both Russia and Ukraine and ensure the security of both countries. And probably those negotiators from the Ukrainian side are right who, quite carefully, by the way, but still put forward the idea that maybe we should talk about European security as a whole.
From Minsk and Moscow, we increasingly hear talk about dialogue, about peace, about a willingness to resolve all difficulties. But from the West, all we hear are diktats and ultimatums. And even the latest deal is being called simply a disgrace for the EU by both the EU and the US. So this, diktat, ultimatums, trade wars, tariff dictates, where can all this lead the global economy, and what should we do about it? What does this mean for us?
Recently, the Russian leadership rightly stated that this kind of continuation, although it has already happened, will lead to the deindustrialization of Europe, even though this process has already begun there and is still ongoing. They will destroy Europe, the European Union. Well, there have been rumors that the Americans actually have this goal too, to weaken this center of power. After all, the European Union was not a weak organization. And that's exactly what will happen. And what they should have done was not butt heads with us, as I've said more than once, but to stand together. If the European Union and Russia, if that power were to unite, then of course, the Americans would never allow it. That is terrifying for them. It's even scarier for them than China would be. If that were united, it would be a real force. But they don't understand that, or maybe they just don't need it. I look at these leaders and, well, I don't want to be too harsh in describing them, but some are already on their way out, as they say, lame ducks. Others have just come in, and their approval ratings are already below 20%. People don't like this policy. And why don't the people of Europe like it? The main reason is their stance on Ukraine. They're getting poorer themselves, while huge sums, billions, even up to trillions, are being spent on weapons and aid for Ukraine. Well, I don't know. Maybe that's just not right.
You know, not so long ago, political analysts and people in so-called political circles used to say that the European Union is an economic giant but a political dwarf. Those aren't my words. I don't want to offend anyone. We ourselves have read this in Western sources. But I kept talking about it all the time. In the past, this was always important in the modern world, and today it's especially so. Sovereignty plays, you could say, a key role, including for economic development. So, it was clear that the European Union and Europe didn't have much sovereignty to begin with. Now it's become obvious that they don't have any at all. And right after that, in the critical situation that has developed, come economic losses as well, and the loss of political sovereignty now leads to the loss of economic sovereignty and to enormous losses. That's why I'm always talked about this. One of the key tasks, including the tasks of the special military operation, is to strengthen Russia's sovereignty.
Since the significant topic of Ukraine inevitably comes up in one way or another in nearly every important discussion, regarding the recent widespread scandals in Ukraine involving various anti-corruption agencies, will you truly think? How would you thoughtfully comment on precisely what happened there?
Vasily Grigorievich, how would you comment on the scandal involving the anti-corruption agencies?
I kept thinking and thinking, well, the West is putting pressure on Zelensky right now. And I'm watching all this and thinking, what did Zelensky expect? He took billions, hundreds of billions in money. The West says, well, we want to see where this money is going to be spent. And at some point, they suggested creating an anti-corruption bureau and an anti-corruption prosecutor's office. This is exactly about sovereignty. He took the money. Who gave it? They say, we want to see how it's used. They agreed. Now they've woken up. Well, maybe they want to organize elections or something else. This is about the people. They tried to do it. The West quickly got organized and said no. And 2 days later, or however long it was, maybe 2 hours, the Rada canceled everything and he signed the law. What kind of sovereignty is that? There's no sovereignty at all, and there's no need to get upset about it. You took the money, and the one who gave it wanted to keep an eye on you, as a non-sovereign state, to see where you spent the money. And you know where it went. During this time, People have built solid mansions on the French Riviera and beyond, and they're doing just fine. Some of them are even aiming for the presidency of Ukraine. So it's just a game of musical chairs. There's no other way to put it. And at the core, it's really about the loss of sovereignty and independence.
In general, corruption is a negative phenomenon in society that is typical of very many, if not all, countries in the world. There's nothing unusual about it. The real question is the degree of corruption and a society's ability and willingness to fight this phenomenon. But what does it mean for a society to be willing and able to fight corruption? In other words, society itself must be ready, must want to, and must be able to fight corruption. And if society can influence such processes, that's part of democracy. But democracy can't be imported from outside, just as you can't fight phenomena like corruption from the outside. Especially when it comes to those who themselves suffer from the same corruption. What? You think there's no corruption in Europe or the United States? Over there, it's basically legalized. They've created the institution of lobbying. What is that? It means money is circulating, being handed out to officials at all levels of power. That's all there is to it. That's corruption too. And here it's clear that Ukraine is a country where corruption is really rampant. Can it be defeated from the outside? As Alexander Grigorievich said, they created all these different bureaus. They don't answer to the local authorities at all, not to the president, not to parliament, to no one. This is an external institution. Listen, I just said, can democracy, including anti-corruption institutions, be brought in from the outside? When were these institutions created in Ukraine? In 2015. And what year is it now? 2025.
So, corruption has been defeated.
Of course. So what? These institutions have existed for 10 years, and all over the world people are shouting at the top of their lungs, help! Corruption is overwhelming everyone in Ukraine. Yes, that's exactly how it is. But the effectiveness of these externally imposed institutions is zero. We shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be imposing some kind of external governance institutions on the people, in this case, the Ukrainian people, but instead helping people stand on their own feet to create these institutions themselves. It's impossible for people to elect a government, elect a president, a parliament, and yet have no influence over the processes happening in society. That's a humiliating situation. A complete lack of sovereignty. Yeah, that's right. They tried to change something there, to get back at least a part of their sovereignty. But as soon as those at the top didn't like it, they whistled, snapped their fingers, and everything was immediately put back the way it was. It would have been better if they hadn't done anything at all. They should have just sat still, excuse me, and everything would have stayed neat, tidy, and smooth. All they did was embarrass themselves. That's it. But the very idea that it's necessary to somehow regain at least part of their sovereignty, that's definitely the right thought. You can't argue with that.
Regarding the negotiation process on Ukraine, to clarify, it's moving along with difficulty and not quickly. You've already touched on this a bit, Alexander Grigorievich, but still, is Belarus ready to provide any assistance in this regard? Does Russia need this today?
Vladimir Vladimirovich and I agreed a long time ago. If it's needed, he'll always let me know, and Belarus will get involved in the process and in the processes. Just today, as I just mentioned, an agreement was reached in Istanbul. Important issues, exchange of prisoners of war, the wounded, and so on and so forth. I called Vladimir Vladimirovich and told him that we treat everyone the same. He supports this. And Ukraine, the people, both Ukrainians and Russians, they're all soldiers. Some are wounded, some have other issues. Anyone who needs it, we take straight to the hospital if urgent help is needed. And there are such people, not just prisoners of war, but also the bodies of the dead. Ukrainians don't trust anyone. So, let the Belarusians, well, roughly speaking, carry the bodies. Some over there, others back here. Only Belarusians. So, the railways were restored so that refrigerated cars could be brought in there. No, only Belarusians are allowed to get behind the controls of that locomotive and haul the refrigerated cars back and forth. We were looking for people. We had to find Afghans, those who fought in Afghanistan. We found railroad workers who used to do this kind of work. The Russians asked us, the Ukrainians agreed to it. We're doing it. If needed, they'll ask us again. But Vladimir Vladimirovich said it absolutely right. On this, my point of view completely matches his. It's just about, this chase of Yar. We're absolutely in the loop. It really is, I don't.